There are days when you wake up with a feeling that's hard to explain. It's not sadness, it's not anxiety, it's not exhaustion. It's something deeper. It's as if a part of you knows you could feel better, live better, think better, but you're not doing it. As if a quiet force whispers, right before you open your eyes, that you're living far below what you're capable of. It's not a voice that screams. It's a murmur. A soft but persistent reminder, you're not well, but you could be, and you ignore it. You get up. You move. You tell yourself the same old story. That's life. It'll pass. I'm just tired. I don't have time. But deep down, you know the truth. You don't feel bad because of what happens to you, but because of how you live each day. Because of tiny habits, subtle, invisible, automatic, those that seem harmless, but are slowly dimming you. It's like a drop of water falling on a stone every day. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't bother you, but it wears you down, and one day you look at your life and feel the full erosion. An erosion you created yourself. There's a moment everyone has lived, even if no one admits it. That instant when you look at yourself in the mirror and don't recognize what you see, not because you've changed physically, but because you recognize the feeling. The feeling of having lived without intention, of having spent entire weeks just surviving, of having let life run over you as if you were a spectator and not the protagonist. That moment is brutal because it shows you a truth you avoid. The days that damaged you weren't the hard ones, they were the empty ones. The days where you didn't choose, the days where you didn't act, the days where you let everything drag you along, the days where you did nothing to feel better. And here's the unsettling part. Your life could change radically with simple habits. But simple habits are the hardest to maintain because they don't reward you instantly. They don't create euphoria. They don't distract. They don't numb. They don't impress anyone. On the surface, they don't make a difference. But the difference is in repetition. The difference is in the invisible. The difference is in what you do when no one is watching. And you know it. You know that walking for 5 minutes changes your mind. You know that breathing deeply changes your day. You know that writing your thoughts quiets the storm. You know that cleaning your space clears your head. You know that saying enough sets you free. But still, you don't do it. And this isn't judgment. It's a mystery. A mystery that touches everyone. Why do we avoid the very things we need the most? I'll tell you bluntly, because the simple things reveal too much. Because when you do something simple, waking up early, organizing your day, breathing, thinking, moving, setting boundaries, you can no longer blame the world. You're forced to face yourself, to admit the responsibility is yours. And that truth is more overwhelming than pain. That's why we prefer chaos. Noise, confusion, emotional excuses, sad stories, toxic cycles, because as long as life is tangled, you don't have to take responsibility for yourself. But when life becomes simple, there's nowhere left to hide. And this is where Stoic philosophy shatters the modern ego. It forces you to look at the day, not the tragedy, the habit, not the destiny, the moment, not the excuse. It forces you to understand that you don't need a perfect life to feel better. You just need to live differently. A little order, a little intention, a little honesty, a little action. And that little is enough to transform who you are on the inside. But of course, this isn't attractive. It doesn't sell. It's not glamorous. It doesn't sound heroic. Because people want massive changes, dramatic revelations, instant solutions. And that's why they've been stuck for years. Real happiness isn't built in extraordinary moments. It's built in the silence of a calm morning, in the small act of writing what you feel, in choosing not to argue, in getting up when you don't want to, in organizing your environment so your mind can breathe, in those tiny decisions that seem irrelevant, until one day you realize they've transformed you completely. The simple things are what save you, but the simple things are what you ignore the most. And if you're listening to this, it's not by accident. Maybe you're here because you're tired of feeling empty. Maybe because you're done carrying your own mind like a weight. Maybe because you sense you could feel better, but don't know where to start. Maybe because, in silence, you want to reconnect with yourself. And today, right here, I'm going to give you exactly that. The simple path to getting yourself back. Not spectacular, not magical, not immediate, but powerful, real, and brutally honest. The 12 lessons that follow aren't advice. They're reminders, whiplashes of clarity, doors to your center, habits so simple they hurt because they leave you with no excuses. And once you hear them, you won't be able to unknow them. You won't be able to pretend you don't know what to do. You won't be able to hide behind emotional laziness anymore, because once simple things are truly understood, they become responsibility. So if you're ready to stop surviving and start living with intention, truly stay. What comes next may sound small, but it will be the biggest thing you ever do for yourself. Before we begin, I want you to declare your commitment by leaving in the comments. From today on, I choose to feel better. That phrase will be your reminder that you're here to build habits that strengthen your mind, your calm, and your inner clarity. Not to survive, not to endure, not to keep living on autopilot, but to reclaim your energy, your presence, and your ability to enjoy life without so much internal noise. This is the moment to show yourself that you deserve an ordered mind, a steady body, and a day that begins with intention, not anxiety. Today, you'll discover simple yet deeply transformative habits that can shift your emotional state without demanding perfection, only consistency. Without further introduction, let's begin. First, Stoic habit. Begin the day with intention. Waking up is not the same as getting up. Many people open their eyes, but very few truly wake up. Most stand up as an automatic reaction, dragged by obligations, screens, noise, notifications, to-dos, and other people's expectations. They're alive, yes, but not awake. And that's the first mistake that destroys mental clarity, starting the day without choosing it. A day without intention isn't a day, it's an accident. It's impulse. It's a repetition of yesterday. It's letting your mind wake up on autopilot, following paths you didn't choose, responding to stimuli you didn't select, absorbing emotions that aren't even yours. That's why so many people feel exhausted before they even begin, because they start by giving themselves away instead of gathering themselves first. Stoicism breaks that inertia with something as simple as, it is powerful, directing your mind before the world does. And although it sounds obvious, it's one of the hardest practices to maintain, because it requires you to make yourself the first act of your day, and almost nobody does that. When Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "At dawn, remember you are created for human work," he wasn't talking about productivity, effort, or achievements. He was talking about purpose, about remembering before your feet even touch the floor that your life is yours, that your mind is yours, that your day belongs to you, that nothing external has authority over your spirit unless you hand it over. That's intention. It's not motivation. It's not emotional hype. It's not energy. It's direction. Imagine this. You wake up, feel that brief moment suspended between sleep and awareness, and instead of grabbing your phone, opening social media, or reading messages, you simply stay with yourself. You feel your body. You notice your breathing. You acknowledge the most essential fact. You are here. And in that moment, you choose not what you're going to do today, but the state from which you're going to live it. Intention is not a list, it's an inner stance, a spiritual decision. Today I act from calm. Today I won't react from impulse. Today I'll do what depends on me and release what doesn't. Today I am the owner of my energy. That silent declaration changes the entire architecture of your day. Because the morning has a power we underestimate. It's the only moment when your mind is clean, open, vulnerable, malleable, ready to take shape. What you do then determines everything that follows. But if the first thing you see is chaos, your mind repeats chaos. If the first thing you see is comparison, your mind repeats comparison. If the first thing you see is rush, your mind repeats rush. If the first thing you see is noise, your mind repeats noise. That's why beginning with intention is so radical. It protects your first mental space, and by protecting it, you protect the rest of your life. Here's what most people ignore. Intention doesn't require time. It requires honesty. You can declare it in 30 seconds. You can affirm it in 1 minute. You can breathe twice and decide who you are today. The hard part isn't doing it. It's remembering. Because if the mind isn't given direction, it clings to the path of least resistance. Thinking about what's missing, replaying what hurts, anticipating what it fears, comparing itself to everything it sees, reacting to whatever it receives. Intention cuts that cycle. It's like placing a sword at the gate of your thoughts before intruders come in. So I want you to picture the difference between two lives. First life, you wake up, grab your phone, read messages, get startled, compare your morning to everyone else's, feel pressure, rush, get dressed quickly, and head out without thinking. You didn't choose your energy. Your energy chose you. Second life, you wake up, breathe, feel your body, affirm your direction, choose your emotional stance, remember your purpose. And only then do you step into the world. You own your mind before the world claims it. Do you see the difference? The first life is survival. The second is inner leadership. And the fascinating part is that the bridge between them is tiny. A small moment of awareness that most people never cross because it's too simple. But simplicity isn't weakness. Simplicity is concentrated power. A soldier doesn't begin a battle improvising. An architect doesn't build without a design. A wise person doesn't think without examining themselves. So why would you start your day without a map? Intention is the map. It's not rigidity. It's not micromanaging. It's not obsessive control. It's emotional direction. It's an inner north. It's spiritual order. And when you do this every morning, even for a single minute, something begins to shift without you noticing. Your mind stops chasing the world, and the world begins to align with your mind. Your patience grows. Your clarity deepens. Your energy stabilizes. Your attitude aligns. And with time, you discover something surprising. You were never an anxious person. You were a person without intention. Intention is the antidote to a chaotic life. It's the first brick of serenity. It's the simplest and most transformative Stoic habit. Because life doesn't improve when your circumstances change. It improves when you change the way you enter them. And it all begins here. When you decide that your first thought of the day belongs to you, not to the world, that is the true awakening. Second Stoic habit. Let go of what you cannot control. There is a silent trap that consumes more energy than any physical labor, more strength than any workout, more peace than any conflict, trying to control what was never yours. And even if you understand this intellectually, emotionally, you still cling. You try to control other people's timing, reactions, decisions, words, the past, the future, opinions, injustice, uncertainty, and you end up breaking on the inside. The second Stoic habit is not a pretty inspirational quote for social media. It is spiritual surgery, removing the impulse to control reality. Epictetus said it without decoration. Some things are up to you, others are not. All unnecessary suffering begins when you confuse those two categories. All inner power begins when you distinguish them. But in practice, making that distinction feels impossible, because you grew up with the illusion that you could influence everything if you just tried hard enough. You were told you could make someone love you if you were better, that you could avoid mistakes if you were perfect, that you could secure the future if you were prepared, that you could change the past if you just understood it. And from that, you built an emotional prison, the prison of control. Letting go of control is not giving up. Letting go of control is stopping the fight against nature. The world will not adjust to your wishes. People will not behave the way you expect. Life will not follow your script. And no matter how much you suffer because of that, it remains true. But the Stoic does something radical. He refuses to waste energy fighting the inevitable. He knows that anyone who tries to control the external world is like someone trying to hold water in their hands. The harder they squeeze, the faster it escapes. And you've lived this. You tried to control someone's reaction, and the more you tried, the further they pulled away. You tried to control an outcome at work, and the more you obsessed, the more exhausted you became. You tried to control an emotion, and the more you hid it, the stronger it returned later. You tried to control uncertainty, and the more you resisted it, the more fearful you felt. The obsession with controlling the external makes your mind a slave to what does not depend on it. Letting go of control makes your mind free, even in chaos. And here comes the essential question. What does depend on you? Very little. Almost everything. Both are true, depending on how you look at it. You can't control what others do, but you can control how you respond. You can't control the past, but you can control the meaning you give it. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you interpret it. You can't control what others feel for you, but you can control the respect you give yourself. You can't control time, but you can control what you do with the time you have. You can't control injustice, but you can control your integrity when facing it. That is the Stoic balance. Release the external, govern the internal. When you fail to make that distinction, your emotions become slaves to the world. When you make it, the world stops dictating your mental state. This habit is built through steps. 1. Pause. Before reacting, ask yourself, does this depend on me? Most of the time, the answer will be a clear no. 2. Accept the no, not as resignation, but as clarity. Acceptance is not defeat. Acceptance is seeing things as they are, without the distortion of your desires. 3. Focus your energy where you do have power, not where you want power, but where it truly exists. Life is a vast ocean. You cannot control its waves, but you can control the direction of your ship. The wise don't waste energy trying to stop storms. The wise strengthen the rudder. And here comes the uncomfortable truth. Many of your anxieties don't come from what happens, but from your emotional arrogance, that childish belief that if I try hard enough, nothing will go wrong. That isn't hope. That's delusion. Life doesn't follow your rules, but it always responds to your attitude. Letting go of control doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting without obsession, influencing without demanding, giving your best without clinging to the outcome, moving with inner firmness, not outer anxiety. It is a habit that purifies the soul because it removes a burden you were never meant to carry. Look at your life. How many battles have you fought only in your mind? How many imaginary conversations have you played out? How many scenarios have you invented? How many times have you suffered for something that never happened? How many people have you tried to change without success? How many times have you tried to predict everything just to feel safe and still felt insecure? That exhaustion has a name: toxic control. And the cure also has a name: clarity. The Stoic is clear. He doesn't involve himself where he has no influence. He doesn't invest energy where there will be no return. He doesn't poison himself with what is outside his reach. He doesn't try to convince those who don't want to listen. He doesn't try to explain the unexplainable. He doesn't try to stop the inevitable. He doesn't try to change those who don't want to change. And because of that clarity, he has energy left for what does depend on him: his character, his conduct, his discipline, his purpose. That is real freedom. When you let go of what you cannot control, you regain control of yourself. And when you regain control of yourself, something strange, almost magical happens. You feel better every day, even though nothing external has changed. The world stays the same. People stay the same. Problems stay the same. But you don't. And that inner shift transforms everything. What used to make you explode now makes you breathe. What used to make you panic now makes you reflect. What used to make you beg now makes you choose. What used to dominate you now leaves you in peace, because you finally understood the secret Epictetus left for all of us. Freedom is wanting things to happen as they do. Letting go is not losing. Letting go is returning to yourself. Letting go is honesty. Letting go is self-respect. Letting go is wisdom. And in that letting go, your strength begins. Third Stoic habit: choose the most useful thought, not the most comfortable one. There is a brutal truth that almost no one wants to accept. Your mind does not offer you the truth. It offers you options. And most of those options are not designed to help you. They are designed to protect you, even if that protection destroys you in the long run. Your mind gives you the fastest interpretation, not the wisest one, the most emotional, not the most fair, the most comfortable, not the most useful. And that is where chaos begins. Because what's comfortable almost never strengthens you. What's comfortable rarely makes you grow. What's comfortable gives you instant relief and long-term consequences. That's why this habit is so powerful. Choosing the most useful thought, not the most comfortable one. It is a complete recalibration of your mental life. In Stoic terms, it means this: the wise examine their judgments. The foolish obey them. The wise choose their interpretation. The foolish cling to the first one that appears. The wise seek clarity. The foolish seek emotional relief. And here is the final blow. What you think is optional, not inevitable, not mandatory, not automatic. Optional, but it doesn't feel optional, because your thoughts arrive with such force, such authority, such immediacy, that they feel like orders. That comment was against you. You won't achieve anything today. You failed. You're incompetent. They're going to leave you. You're not enough. You should have tried harder. They're definitely judging you. Everything is going to go wrong. Do you know why these thoughts feel so real? Because you don't have the habit of questioning them. You accept them as they come. You believe them as they appear. You repeat them without examining them. And your mind becomes a factory of interpretations that govern your emotions, regardless of whether they're true. Stoicism exists to break this pattern. Seneca teaches that suffering does not come from events, but from your opinion about them. Epictetus reminds us, it's not things themselves that disturb men, but their judgments about things. Marcus Aurelius simplifies it even further. The mind becomes invincible when it interprets nothing as harm. And that is the core of the habit. Your thoughts can change everything, but only if you choose them. You already know the comfortable thought. It's the one that justifies you, the one that makes you the victim, the one that makes you doubt, the one that makes you quit, the one that blames others, the one that avoids effort, the one that keeps you from growing, the one that gives you the feeling of being right even when you're not. Comfortable thoughts hug you today and destroy you tomorrow. Useful thoughts, on the other hand, are uncomfortable at first, but they transform you. They are the thoughts that hold you responsible. that force you out of the victim role, that demand courage, that require discipline, that confront you with yourself. But they are also the thoughts that make you stronger than any circumstance. Here is the real distinction. Comfortable thought, this is too hard, better give up. Useful thought, it's hard because it matters. Comfortable thought, I can't handle this. Useful thought, I can't yet. Comfortable thought, everything is against me. Useful thought, what can I do with what I have today? Comfortable thought, they treated me unfairly. Useful thought, I can't control that, but I can control who I become next. I can. Do you see the difference? One thought hands you over, the other gives you back your power. And this is not cheap positivity. This is Stoic, rational reinterpretation. It's not about saying everything is fine. It's about saying, even if everything is not fine, I can be fine. Choosing the useful thought does not mean lying to yourself. It means directing your mind toward what strengthens you, not toward what weakens you. The mind, if you do not direct it, will always take the lowest route, like water. It will seek the fastest, most emotional, most reactive interpretation, the one filled with past wounds. But you are not water. You are the riverbed. You define the direction. You choose which thought shapes your decisions. Imagine something unexpected happens. A problem at work, a tense conversation, a personal failure, an obstacle you didn't foresee. Your mind reacts instantly. It gives you a story, an interpretation, a judgment, an emotion. That is the comfortable thought, the automatic one, the programmed one. But right there in that microsecond between thought and emotion is your freedom. That tiny space determines whether you are the owner of your mind or its servant. That second of awareness is where you decide, do I choose the automatic thought or the useful one? Do I choose the reactive or the reasoned? Do I choose the judgment that sinks me or the interpretation that lifts me? Do I choose to be a victim or responsible? Fear or clarity? Impulse or temperance? Most people don't even know that second exists. The Stoic lives there. And that's why he grows even when life doesn't change. Because his mind does change. Because he doesn't think to feel good. He thinks to become strong. And here comes the deepest part of this habit. Your life is not made of facts. It's made of interpretations. Two people can live the exact same event and have completely different lives. The difference is not the reality. It's the thought they chose about that reality. And now the final revelation. Your mind can be your greatest limitation or your greatest weapon. It all depends on the thought you choose to feed. The comfortable thought makes you smaller. The useful thought expands you. The comfortable thought cages you. The useful thought frees you. The comfortable thought protects you from the world. The useful thought prepares you for it. And choosing one or the other is a habit, a practice, a training, a daily exercise, an act of inner war. Next time your mind offers you an automatic interpretation, don't accept it as truth. Test it, break it if necessary, replace it without guilt. Choose the thought that strengthens you, not the one that soothes you for a moment. Because happiness doesn't come from changing what happens. It comes from changing how you interpret it. And that power is yours. Fourth Stoic habit. Accept pain as a teacher. Pain is one of those inevitable presences everyone tries to avoid, hide, deny, or numb. But whether people want to hear it or not, there is a truth that has accompanied humanity long before philosophy existed. Pain always comes. It arrives without asking for permission, without announcing itself, without caring about your preparation or your plans. It comes drop by drop or all at once through loss, disappointment, failure, betrayal, or unexpected change. And the more you try to avoid it, the more intense it becomes. Not because pain wants to crush you, but because resistance turns it into torment. What you resist persists. What you accept transforms. For the Stoics, this wasn't a motivational quote. It was a universal law. Suffering doesn't come from the event. It comes from the interpretation. And this is where many people get it wrong. They think accepting pain means giving up, surrendering, or letting themselves be defeated. But acceptance is not falling. Acceptance is understanding. Acceptance is looking directly at what hurts you and acknowledging its existence without fighting against the inevitable. It is not weakness, it is clarity, because the pain you embrace becomes strength, and the pain you reject becomes a shadow. Think for a moment about all the times in your life when you suffered more from resisting than from what was actually happening. Those nights when you replayed what happened, what didn't happen, what should have happened, what you wished had happened. Those days when you fought against a completed event, hoping to change it through obsessive thinking. That exhaustion didn't come from the original pain. It came from the story you built around it. And that story, painful as it is to admit, didn't come from the world, it came from your mind. Seneca explained it with brutal clarity. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. You can go through a difficult experience and grow, or you can cling to the narrative you built around it and remain trapped. The event is neutral, the interpretation is the wound, and your mind, if untrained, will always choose the most dramatic, most personal, most fear-filled, most past-oriented interpretation. That's why accepting pain is the habit that breaks the vicious cycle of suffering. It is choosing truth over interpretation. But accepting pain also means understanding its purpose. Pain doesn't arrive to destroy you. Pain arrives to reveal you. Reveal your patterns. Reveal your attachments. Reveal your inner lies. Reveal your false limits. Reveal the illusions you held because they made you feel safe. Pain is a mirror, one that shows you what you would rather not see but absolutely need to in order to grow. Comfort keeps you the same. Discomfort forces you to evolve. And here comes the most ignored part of Stoicism. Pain, when looked at with serenity, becomes training for the soul. Just as a muscle grows when placed under controlled tension, character grows when you face adversity consciously. It's not about seeking pain, it's about not running when it arrives, because every pain you face becomes a brick in your inner fortress. Every pain you deny becomes a hole that opens beneath your feet. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He lost children, faced plagues, betrayals, wars, and crushing responsibilities. Yet in his journal he wrote, "Every obstacle becomes fuel for virtue," not because he was insensitive to pain, but because he chose to use it as material. He didn't curse it, he didn't avoid it, he studied it, understood it, let it teach him. He never let it govern him. And here's something essential nobody ever told you. Pain is information. Emotional information. Psychological information. Spiritual information. If you feel pain, it means something inside you needs attention. It might be a violated boundary, a broken expectation, an exaggerated attachment, an identity built on something fragile, an old wound still bleeding. Pain points to what is misaligned, and if you avoid it, you never resolve it. The Stoic refuses to be trapped by the drama of pain. He does not turn a wound into an identity. He does not turn a blow into an endless story. The Stoic holds pain with steady hands and asks, "What have you come to show me?" That question changes everything. It pulls you out of the victim role. It turns you into an observer. It turns you into a student. And most importantly, it allows you to move forward. Accepting pain also means releasing the fantasy that life must be perfect to be good. This modern idea destroys more souls than pain ever could. Life does not need to be free of suffering to be meaningful. It needs to be full of purpose. And purpose is forged precisely in the moments when you are tested. When illusions fall, when you must choose between breaking or becoming, when you must meet yourself without shortcuts. This habit is uncomfortable because it forces you to stop using pain as an excuse. Many people cling to pain because it gives them identity. It gives them a story. It gives them justification. It gives them a narrative that keeps them from moving forward. But the Stoic does not use pain as a banner. He uses it as a teacher. And that's the greatest difference between those who grow and those who stay stuck. The first turn every fall into a foundation. The second turn every fall into a wall. Accepting pain doesn't mean it stops hurting. It means you stop fighting the fact that it hurts. You don't need to add guilt, comparison, shame, or rejection. Pain is already strong enough on its own. You don't need extra layers. When you accept it, when you recognize it, when you observe it without judgment, something extraordinary happens. It becomes manageable. It becomes less threatening. It loses its destructive power. Because what was destroying you wasn't the pain itself. It was your resistance to it. Serenity arrives when you understand that you don't need to run from pain to be okay. You can be okay even while going through something difficult. You can be calm even while holding an emotional wound. You can breathe even when your heart feels heavy. Being stoic does not mean being made of stone. It means being steady. It means feeling without losing yourself. It means crying without breaking. It means walking through the storm without becoming the storm. And when you do this, something changes forever. You stop fearing pain. And when you stop fearing pain, you recover a massive part of your freedom. Because most destructive decisions you make come from the fear of suffering, the fear of losing, the fear of being hurt, the fear of failing, the fear of feeling. But when you accept that pain is part of the path, that fear dissolves. It no longer controls you. It no longer directs your life. It no longer dictates your behavior. Accepting pain as a teacher is understanding that what hurts you today will train you tomorrow. That what feels unbearable today will become your strength. That what makes no sense today will become one of your greatest sources of clarity. That what breaks you today will become the place where you rise stronger. Pain is not an enemy. It is instruction. It is initiation. It is revelation. It is transformation. You are not being punished. You are being shaped. And when you understand this, your mind becomes unstoppable. Fifth Stoic habit: train emotional discipline. Most people think discipline is something physical: waking up early, exercising, completing tasks, keeping things organized. But there is another form of discipline much harder, much quieter, and far more decisive. Emotional discipline. That inner ability to govern what you feel before what you feel governs your actions. The strength that keeps you from responding out of anger, deciding out of fear, or acting out of impulse. Emotional discipline is the difference between living in reaction and living by choice. And here is a truth few want to admit. Most of your problems don't come from what happens to you, but from how you react. Your life does not break because of isolated events. It breaks because of automatic responses. It's not the harsh word you heard. It's the anger you unleashed afterward. It's not the moment of frustration. It's the rushed decision you made under its influence. It's not uncertainty. It's the fear you allowed to grow unchecked. Unresolved emotions become misguided actions. And those actions create consequences you may regret for years. Epictetus taught it clearly. We cannot choose our circumstances, but we can choose how we respond to them. Lesson Elena. The wise person is not free from pain, but is free from the instinctive reaction to it. That doesn't make him cold or insensitive. It makes him sovereign over himself. Emotional discipline doesn't eliminate emotion. It channels it. It doesn't suppress, it organizes. It doesn't destroy, it transforms. Because an emotion without direction is a storm, but an emotion that has been trained is power. To understand emotional discipline, you must first understand the nature of emotions. They are impulses, not instructions, signals, not orders. Automatic responses built on past experiences, mental habits, and momentary perceptions. But they are not truth. Anger tells you, attack, but that doesn't mean you should. Fear tells you, run, but that doesn't mean you must. Sadness tells you, stop, but that doesn't mean you're finished. What you feel is not always what fits the moment. Emotional discipline begins in the pause. That micro-instant between feeling and acting. That sacred second where you can stop the impulse and ask yourself, does this depend on me? Is it useful? Is it real? Is it necessary? That second is where your life is decided. Most people react so quickly that they never even see the space between emotion and decision. They live on emotional autopilot, dragged by impulses, shaped by old wounds, ruled by interpretations. And once they've reacted, it's already too late. The word is out. The gesture has hurt. The decision has been made. The consequence has been created. The Stoic, however, trains himself to see that space. That little bridge between feeling and choosing, and he crosses it calmly. He doesn't get swept away by the internal tide. He doesn't confuse emotion with command. He observes, he analyzes, he breathes, and then he acts from the helm, not from the storm. From clarity, not intensity. Seneca said it with almost painful lucidity. The greatest victory is over oneself. He wasn't talking about moral perfection or becoming emotionless like a rock. He meant not allowing a momentary emotion to destroy relationships, opportunities, entire days, or even years of your life. Because a single impulsive reaction can alter a destiny. A single decision made in anger can close doors forever. A single emotional explosion can break what took years to build. And all of that is avoided with emotional discipline. But here is what no one tells you. Emotional discipline is not trained in extreme moments. It is trained in the small ones, not in the great crisis, but every day. In the conversation where you want to interrupt but choose to listen. In the hurtful comment you want to answer but choose to ignore. In the rush you feel but choose to do things properly. In the moment fear appears, but choose not to feed the dark narrative. Those tiny daily acts of self-control become emotional armor when the real storm arrives. Emotional discipline also means stopping the habit of justifying your explosions. Weak people always have excuses. That's just how I am. I lost it. They provoked me. I couldn't help it. But the Stoic does not hide behind emotional excuses. He doesn't say, I'm like this. He says, I'm working on being better. He doesn't say, I couldn't avoid it. He says, I wasn't trained enough. He doesn't say, it's their fault. He says, my reaction is my responsibility. That honesty, though painful, frees you, because only what you acknowledge can be transformed. And understand this, emotional discipline is not about not feeling. It's about feeling without breaking. It's holding the emotion without letting it crush you. It's letting it pass through you without turning against you. It's recognizing your anger without becoming violent, your fear without becoming cowardly, your sadness without becoming inactive, your pride without becoming arrogant, your impulse without becoming reckless. Emotional discipline doesn't kill emotion, it kills the tyranny of emotion. A person without emotional discipline lives at the mercy of the world. Every comment affects them. Every change destabilizes them. Every piece of bad news sends them into the abyss. Every gesture feels like a threat. They need everything to go well, to feel well. They need predictability to feel safe. They have no inner armor, no foundation, no stable ground. Someone with emotional discipline is the opposite. They can walk through chaos with the same calm others only find in order. They can hear criticism without collapsing. They can face crisis without falling apart. They can feel uncertainty without losing control. They can feel fear without obeying it. They can feel anger without acting from it. Their inner ground is firm, their spirit steady, their mind clear. They are sovereign over themselves, even when the world is disordered. And without realizing it, they inspire respect. Emotional discipline also gives you a superpower no one talks about: the ability to choose your energy even when the world tries to impose another. You can keep your center in noise. You can hold calm in conflict. You can stay focused amidst distraction. You can speak with serenity even when spoken to with aggression. You can decide who you are even when the world pushes you to be otherwise. And that is why emotional discipline is directly tied to happiness. Because someone who does not control their emotions does not control their life. They live like a ship without a helm, pulled by external waves, pushed by whichever wind blows, without direction or purpose. But someone who masters their emotional world has immense power. They can choose how they live. They can choose what they feed their mind. They can choose what deserves their energy. They can choose what to interpret and what to discard. They can choose how to respond to everything. Do you want to feel better every day? Train this habit, because happiness doesn't depend on the absence of problems. It depends on making sure your emotions don't become your executioners. You can't avoid feeling, but you can avoid destroying yourself with what you feel. That is the art. That is the virtue. That is the Stoic path. The world will tell you to follow your heart. Stoicism tells you to guide your heart. The world will tell you to be spontaneous. Stoicism tells you to be conscious. The world will tell you to express everything you feel. Stoicism tells you to filter what is worth expressing. And in the end, one path gives you fragility. The other gives you strength. Mastering your emotions doesn't make you cold. It makes you free. Free from impulse. Free from drama. Free from dependency. Free from chaos. Free from reactive living. Free from yourself. And when you reach that point, something powerful happens. You no longer need others to change for you to feel at peace. Because peace no longer depends on the world. It depends on you. Sixth Stoic habit. Practice voluntary discomfort. Most people run from discomfort as if it were an enemy trying to destroy them. But the truth is the opposite. Discomfort is what builds you, sharpens your character, and wakes your mind when comfort puts it to sleep. Comfort, when unbalanced, is not well-being. It is progressive weakening. It makes you fragile, clumsy in the face of adversity, dependent on quick pleasure, and vulnerable to even the slightest change in your environment. When everything around you has to be perfect for you to feel okay, you become a prisoner of your own life. That's why the Stoics insisted on a principle the modern world finds hard to accept. Discomfort is necessary for inner freedom. Practicing voluntary discomfort doesn't mean living in suffering or seeking pointless pain. It means reminding your body and mind that they don't need luxuries to stay strong, that they can adapt, endure, and remain calm, even when something breaks the script. The wise don't crumble before the unexpected, because they've trained their ability to stay grounded without depending on externals. That quiet, daily practice creates a soul more solid than any motivational speech. Strength is not learned through words. It is formed through friction with difficulty. When you fast from pleasures, even for a day, you discover your mind has always been stronger than you believed. When you walk without music, you learn you can accompany yourself without artificial noise. When you refrain from seeking validation, you understand your worth doesn't come from others' eyes, but from your own conduct. It's in those small acts of voluntary discomfort that a kind of inner power is born, one you cannot obtain in any other way. Comfort is pleasant, but it has never made you unbreakable. Discomfort has, The Stoics bathed in cold water, fasted, wore simple clothing, slept on hard surfaces, and avoided excess food and drink, not because they wanted to suffer, but because they wanted to remember a fundamental truth. The human being can withstand far more than the mind believes. Voluntary discomfort was a reminder that well-being is a luxury, not a necessity. And that inner strength doesn't come from easy days. It comes from the days when you choose not to bend before what challenges you. Imagine how your character changes when you do something difficult every day. Something small but difficult. Maybe waking up without hitting snooze. Maybe training even when you don't feel like it. Maybe putting your phone away while you eat. Maybe sitting in silence when your mind wants noise. Maybe saying no when you're used to pleasing. Every act of voluntary discomfort trains you to face life without trembling. And that training turns you into something rare in this century, someone resilient. Because today, people break over anything. A negative comment sinks them. A delay agitates them. An unanswered message panics them. A small difficulty defeats them. Why? Because they don't train. Because they confuse pleasure with peace. Because they live addicted to stimuli that make them feel good without requiring effort. And when real life arrives, life without filters, without likes, without shortcuts, they collapse. But you're not here for that. You're here to be strong, not fragile. And strength requires resistance, not comfort. Voluntary discomfort also gives you something more valuable than any quick pleasure: perspective. When you willingly remove something pleasant, you learn to appreciate what you have. Food tastes better after fasting. A bed feels more comforting after a demanding day. Silence becomes sacred after hours of noise. Company becomes precious after moments of solitude. It's not about losing, it's about elevating your capacity to appreciate. The more discomfort you choose, the deeper your gratitude becomes. And there is an even deeper discomfort: looking inward without emotional makeup. Sitting with yourself, without escape, without distractions, without digital shelters. That is the most powerful discomfort of all, because it shows you who you really are. It shows you what you feel, what hurts, what you hide. And though it's uncomfortable at first, it eventually becomes liberating. Because whoever dares to face their truth, even when it hurts, never wanders lost again. Epictetus taught that a man must train his soul as an athlete trains his body. How do you train a soul? Not by seeking pleasure, but by training endurance. Not by seeking praise, but by building character. Not by seeking ease, but conviction. Voluntary discomfort is the training ground for real life. If you don't use it, you'll find yourself weak when you most need strength. And don't forget a crucial truth: chosen discomfort strengthens you. Ignored discomfort destroys you. If you don't choose small discipline today, life will impose big chaos tomorrow. If you don't choose small difficulty, you'll break under big difficulty. If you don't choose controlled challenge, uncontrolled challenge will crush you. That's why this habit isn't optional. It's essential. Test yourself. Fast for a day. Train without music. Shower with cold water. Leave your phone far away while you work. Walk without headphones. Sit with your silence. Feel discomfort without running from it. You don't do it for pain, you do it for freedom. Because every time you choose discomfort, something inside you expands. Something inside you aligns. Something inside you strengthens. And that strength cannot be taken away, because it didn't come from outside. You forged it. The human being who masters discomfort masters life. Because nothing can surprise him, nothing can break him, nothing can steal his center. Inside you, there is a stronger, more disciplined version of yourself tempered through effort. But that version doesn't appear through comfort, it appears through decision. And when you decide to train even a little every day, you discover a truth few ever experience. You don't need life to be easy to be at peace. You need to be strong enough to walk through it without losing yourself. That strength is called discipline, and that discipline is born from the discomfort you choose, not the comfort you seek. This habit doesn't promise immediate pleasure. It promises freedom. It promises clarity. It promises character. And when you practice it consistently, you will feel something that no excess can give you. Respect for yourself. Respect, because you'll know with certainty that you're not one of those who folds when things get hard. You're one of those who, when discomfort arrives, is already trained. And that, in a fragile world, makes you someone solid, someone reliable, someone strong, someone truly stoic. If something inside you felt relief hearing these habits, follow that impulse and follow us. Subscribing isn't a favor to the podcast. It's an act of respect toward yourself. It means you're no longer willing to live with a saturated, exhausted, or scattered mind. It means you choose clarity, order, intention, and that you're committed to feeling better every day, even through small but consistent steps. Do it now, and share this message with someone who needs it. Because when one person starts cultivating habits that bring calm, they inevitably inspire another to do the same. 7th Stoic habit. Speak only when you add value. There is a silent power that few people master, a power that doesn't come from speaking loudly, quickly, or excessively. It comes from choosing when to speak and when to remain silent. In a world that worships constant opinions, instant reactions, and the compulsive need to respond, this habit is an act of rebellion. Because most people speak without thinking, reply without processing, and form opinions without understanding. Most use words as noise, not as tools. But the Stoic understands something the modern world has forgotten. Every word has a cost. And those who speak without measuring that cost end up indebted to their own impulsiveness. Speaking only when you add value doesn't mean being timid or rigid. It means being conscious. It means understanding that your voice carries weight, and that weight grows or shrinks depending on the quality of what you say. Think of someone whose words you actually remember. You don't remember them because they spoke a lot. You remember them because they spoke when it mattered. Speaking less, when it comes from wisdom and not from fear, creates presence. A well-chosen silence is worth more than 1,000 meaningless sentences. Verbal impulsiveness is one of the greatest sources of human suffering. A single word spoken in anger can destroy a relationship. An unnecessary criticism can close doors. A defensive reaction can provoke conflict. A careless comment can expose what you wanted to protect. For the Stoics, silence wasn't cowardice, it was strategy. Silence is the pause that allows reason to take the place of ego. It is the space where the mind decides clearly what deserves to be expressed and what is better left to die before it's born. But speaking only when you add value is also emotional discipline. It requires defeating the impulse to defend yourself, to justify yourself, to impress, to fill the uncomfortable void of a conversation. It demands deep inner strength, the strength not to speak just to be liked, the strength not to react just to avoid feeling small, the strength not to over-explain when the other person has already chosen not to understand. When you choose silence out of wisdom, you're affirming your power. Because whoever controls their tongue controls their mind. Think of how many times you spoke out of nerves, not necessity. How many times you added details just to convince someone. How many times you responded quickly so you wouldn't seem unsure. How many times you shared opinions that added nothing simply to avoid feeling left out. Now ask yourself, how many of those words actually changed anything? How many helped? How many built something? How many avoided problems instead of creating them? If you're honest, you'll see a harsh truth. Most of what we say is emotional trash, meant only to fill inner emptiness. The Stoic operates differently. Before speaking, he asks, "Is this useful? Is this true? Is this necessary?" If the answer is no, he stays silent, not out of submission, but out of self-respect, because he knows every empty word is wasted energy, and wasted verbal energy weakens presence. But when you speak from temperance, clarity, and intention, each sentence becomes a tool sharp, not because it's aggressive, but because it's precise. Speaking only when you add value forces you to listen more. And real listening is one of the hardest acts for humans. Not listening to reply, not listening to disagree, not listening to compete. Listening to understand. Listening to observe what the other person isn't saying. Listening to see the truth behind the words. Deep listening sharpens your perception, strengthens your intuition, and reveals realities hidden from those who never stop talking. When you reduce your words to what is essential, something extraordinary happens. Your presence becomes more powerful. People pay attention when you speak, not because you speak louder, but because you speak better. And that respect is not earned through forced charisma or endless speeches. It's earned through coherence, through strategic silence, through words that arrive only after being filtered by your reason, not your insecurity. This habit also eliminates a great deal of drama from your life. Drama feeds on impulsive interpretations, reactive replies, and unnecessary conversations that only extend conflict. When you control your tongue, you control the fire. Many arguments die when you don't feed them. Many provocations dissolve when you don't react. Many manipulations lose strength when you refuse to explain yourself to someone who demands it from ego, not sincerity. Silence, when rooted in strength, is a shield. But something deeper happens. This habit forces you to face yourself. It makes you aware of the true reason you want to speak. Sometimes you speak because you crave recognition. Sometimes because you want to correct someone. Sometimes because you need to prove your worth. Sometimes because you're trying to hide your insecurity behind words. When you learn to stay quiet, you start to observe these motives. You start to see your ego at work. You start to realize how much of what you say does not come from wisdom, but from fear. Speaking less also protects you. It protects you from those who want to manipulate you, from those who twist your words, from those who use everything you say as ammunition. When you speak less, you give less access to your inner world. You reveal fewer vulnerabilities. You reduce exposure. And from that protected place, your mind stays steadier, calmer, and more self-possessed. Silence also strengthens your connection with reality. When you're not busy thinking about what to say next, you can observe the present more clearly. You notice details you used to miss. You can feel your body. You can perceive what the situation truly requires. Silence is not emptiness, it is refined perception, and that perception makes you more emotionally intelligent, more intuitive, more strategic. This habit changes you. It makes you more intentional, more aware, stronger. Because only the strong can stay silent in a world that demands reaction. Only the strong can listen when everyone wants to speak. Only the strong can use words as tools rather than emotional escape. And when you learn to use your words wisely, something extraordinary happens. Your life becomes lighter, more ordered, more yours. Practice this habit today. Before speaking, ask yourself whether you're adding value or adding noise. Ask whether you're speaking from reason or from insecurity. Ask whether your words clarify, build, elevate, or merely fill a void. And if the answer is no, choose silence. It won't make you less. It will make you more. Because in a world that screams, the one who masters silence holds an authority no one can imitate. Their presence impacts. Their words carry weight. Their calm becomes contagious, and their character becomes impossible to ignore. That is the power of chosen silence. That is the power of speaking only when you add value. That is the power of the Stoic who refuses to waste his voice. Eighth Stoic habit. Evaluate your day before you sleep. There is a moment each day when the truth becomes impossible to ignore. It doesn't happen in the morning, when urgency pulls you out of bed. It doesn't happen at midday, when obligations dictate your rhythm. It doesn't happen in the afternoon, when you're still wearing the mask you show the world. It happens at night when everything quiets down, when the noise fades, when the lights dim, and you're left alone with the only presence you can never escape, yourself. And in that silent encounter, in that space where no one sees you, where no one can applaud you or judge you, the most honest question a human can ask arises: what did I do with my life today? The Stoics understood that the day doesn't end when your eyes close, it ends when your awareness opens. Seneca practiced this every night. He described it as an internal trial, a careful review of his actions, words, and intentions. Not for punishment, but for understanding. Because self-knowledge doesn't come from reading, listening, or thinking. It comes from observing yourself with precision. And at night, when the mind is less distracted, the mirror becomes brutally clear. Evaluating your day before sleeping is more than reflection. It is pausing the rhythm of your life to evaluate the direction. It is asking yourself whether you lived according to your values, whether you acted with the strength you wish to cultivate, whether you spoke from reason or from impulse, whether you owned your emotions or became their prisoner. And this is not done from guilt, it is done from responsibility. Guilt paralyzes. Responsibility transforms. The Stoic does not punish himself for what went wrong, he corrects it the next day. This habit is uncomfortable because it forces you to stop lying to yourself. It forces you to see where you traded dignity for comfort, where you said too much, where you reacted without thinking, where you committed to things that do not align with you, where you wasted time, where you acted out of fear, where you abandoned yourself just a little. Every night is a chance to look at yourself without makeup. And that honesty, raw, unfiltered honesty, is the key most people avoid because they fear discovering they are not as strong as they pretend. But the Stoic understands something essential. You cannot transform yourself unless you first see yourself. Most people avoid introspection because they don't want to face the evidence. They live by inertia, not intention. They react, they don't choose. They talk, but they don't think. They want to change, but they never analyze what they did today to move closer or further from that change. They want a better life without reviewing their behavior. They want peace without facing their contradictions. They want growth without giving up the comfort that keeps them stuck. Reviewing your day cuts through the illusion. It is a brutal form of discipline because it strips your soul bare, and only those who dare to see their soul can shape it. But this habit is also deeply liberating. You evaluate your day not just to see what went wrong, but also to recognize what went right. The human mind exaggerates the negative and forgets the positive. The nightly review corrects that distortion. It reminds you of what you accomplished, even the small things. It reminds you of the moments you acted with self-control, when you chose silence, when you were stronger than your impulse, when you overcame fear even by a millimeter. And that awareness, your evidence of progress, builds real confidence, the kind that doesn't come from motivational speeches, but from your own actions. Evaluating your day also organizes your mind. Loose thoughts create noise. Unprocessed emotions create tension. Unspoken doubts turn into anxiety. When you examine your day with calm, your mind finds closure. What was unfinished becomes clear. What felt heavy becomes lighter. What confused you becomes organized. It's like clearing your desk before sleeping. You leave your inner world ready to begin again. Nighttime clarity creates morning strength. This habit also strengthens your character because it requires discipline. You won't always feel like doing it. Some nights you'll want to fall into bed and forget everything. But that is precisely the training. Doing it even when you don't want to. Doing it even when it hurts. Doing it even when the temptation to distract yourself is strong. Because every night you review your day, you are telling your mind, I am in charge here. And that repeated message becomes identity. The nightly review also teaches you to let go. When you examine your day, you can release what you can no longer change. You can stop fighting what already happened. You can stop carrying unnecessary guilt. You can forgive yourself for a mistake and choose not to repeat it. You can close cycles that, left open, turn into inner storms. Night is a doorway. If you close it with reflection, you wake up with freedom. If you leave it half open, you enter the new day carrying yesterday's chaos. And perhaps most importantly, evaluating your day brings you closer to your truth, not the world's truth, not anyone else's truth, yours. Because honest review forces you to listen to your values, your limits, your wounds, your intentions. It shows you who you're really being. And that vision, even when it hurts, is the foundation of growth. You cannot improve what you refuse to see. You cannot correct what you deny. You cannot transform what you don't acknowledge. That is why this habit is an act of spiritual courage. Do it tonight. Sit with yourself. Ask, did I act like the person I want to become? Was I aligned with my principles? Was I a slave to my emotions or the master of them? Did my words build or did my reactions destroy? Did I choose my thoughts or did they drag me? Did I add or did I subtract? Did I advance or did I betray myself a little? Don't fear the answer. The answer is yours, and it will transform you. Evaluate your day before you sleep, not as an empty ritual, but as training for the soul, because only the one who faces himself each night wakes up stronger, wiser, and more in control of his destiny every morning. Ninth Stoic habit: seek purpose, not pleasure. There is a silent lie that governs the lives of millions. A lie so comfortable, so tempting, so perfectly disguised that almost no one realizes it is quietly destroying them from within. It's the idea, subtle, sweet, addictive, that the goal of life is to feel good, that what matters is chasing every pleasant emotion, every impulse that promises quick relief, every distraction that numbs you, every stimulus brighter than the last. And without noticing, people build a life that collapses the moment pleasure fades. Because pleasure calms you for a moment, but purpose calms you for a lifetime. The Stoics understood this 2,000 years ago. They knew that the human being who lives chasing sensations ends up empty, not for lack of experiences, but for lack of direction. Pleasure, when it becomes your guide, disorganizes the soul. It weakens you. It makes you dependent. It makes you vulnerable to anything that promises a fast dose of satisfaction. But purpose is something else. Purpose is structure. It is root. It is foundation. It is the thing that keeps you standing even when everything around you collapses. Seeking purpose instead of pleasure means asking yourself the question almost no one dares to ask. Why am I doing this? An uncomfortable question because it often reveals truths the mind would rather ignore. Maybe you act to impress, maybe to escape, maybe to feel valuable, maybe to stop thinking, maybe because you don't know who you are without the external stimuli that keep you distracted. Yet when you start questioning it, something shifts, something aligns. Purpose is not a spiritual concept, nor a romantic idea. It is a way of living. It is acting from inner direction, not emotional scarcity. Purpose gives you a compass for deciding, advancing, staying, or walking away. Pleasure only gives impulses that change with your mood, your insecurity, your fear. Purpose stays. Purpose doesn't bend to your emotions bend to your purpose. But understanding this requires a level of honesty. Few people allow themselves, because to seek purpose, you must admit that you've settled for emotional crumbs, that you've gotten used to feeling good for a moment, even if it costs you feeling empty for days, that you've let the immediate outweigh the important, that you've preferred the comfort of not thinking over the responsibility of acting with clarity. The Stoics spoke of living according to nature, and the nature of a human being is not pleasure. It is meaning, it is virtue, it is coherence, it is greatness. When you live with purpose, even pain becomes useful. Even adversity builds you. Even loss teaches you. Even exhaustion strengthens you. Because everything serves something greater than the present moment. Pleasure, on the other hand, demands empty sacrifices. It promises relief, but asks for moral discipline in exchange. It asks for your time, your peace, your focus, your willpower. And when it gets them, it leaves you the same or worse than before. It is a loop that never ends, a hunger that never fills, a void that pleasure cannot cure. That is why people who seem to have everything, money, comfort, stimulation, entertainment, still feel empty, because emptiness is not filled by sensations. It is filled by direction. Seeking purpose requires learning to renounce. Renounce the immediate. Renounce the superficial. Renounce what entertains but does not build. Renounce the excuses your mind uses to protect you from effort. It requires acting even when you don't feel like it. Keeping your word even when no one is watching. Remembering who you want to become even when the day pushes you toward comfort. This habit also reveals something profound. Happiness does not come from pleasure, it comes from alignment. When you live according to your principles, when your conduct reflects your character, when you do what you know you must do, peace appears on its own. No stimulus needed, no noise, no illusion. Inner calm cannot be bought. It is built through decisions, not emotions. Purpose also protects you from emotional chaos. Pleasure depends on external conditions, that things go your way, that people behave as you hope, that your environment stays stable. Purpose depends on none of that. Purpose stands even when everything else falls apart. Purpose does not collapse in difficulty. It strengthens, because it is built from within, not from the outside. When you live this habit sincerely, your entire life reorganizes. You learn to prioritize, to choose your battles, to say no with firmness, to walk away from what drains you and walk toward what strengthens you. You learn that time is your most valuable resource, and wasting it on things that don't matter is an act of self-betrayal. You learn that every day is a chance to move closer to the person you want to become, not the one the world pressures you to be. Purpose also gives you identity, not the superficial identity of labels, but the solid identity built on principles. When you know what you live for, you don't need others to validate your path. You don't need applause. You don't need approval. You don't need to impress or fit in. Purpose gives you a conviction no one can take from you. And then comes the most important question you can ask yourself. What truly moves you? What expands your heart? What demands greatness from you? What makes you feel alive instead of merely existing? If you cannot answer, you are not lost. You are asleep. And this habit exists to wake you up, because when you start seeking purpose, you start discovering your values. And once you discover your values, your life stops being accidental and becomes deliberate. Pleasure comes and goes. Purpose stays. Pleasure excites. Purpose transforms. Pleasure entertains. Purpose elevates. Pleasure soothes the moment. Purpose orders the life. That is why this habit is a pillar of Stoicism. Because the wise person does not live to feel good. He lives to become someone worthy of respect. And the paradox is this: when you live that way, happiness arrives on its own. A calm, grounded, stable happiness. a happiness that does not depend on the world, but on you. Seek purpose, not as a distant idea, but as a daily discipline. Ask yourself each day why you do what you do. Check whether your actions reflect your values or your impulses. And if you discover you've been living for pleasure, don't punish yourself. Redirect, reorient, adjust. Every day is a chance to start again. Every day is a reminder that you can live with intention or with inertia, and the choice is yours. 10th Stoic habit: learn to say enough. There comes a moment in life when chasing more stops being growth and becomes a sophisticated form of self-abandonment. A moment when the line between discipline and obsession becomes so thin that you can't tell if you're advancing or running from something inside you. Most people never notice it in time because they confuse movement with progress, busyness with purpose, ambition with direction. And without realizing it, they get trapped in an endless cycle of demands: more success, more productivity, more validation, more achievements, more recognition, more of everything. More, until nothing is left. Saying enough is not giving up. It is wisdom. It is the solemn act of setting limits even with the things you enjoy. Stopping even when you could keep going. Choosing pause when everyone around you seems to be running a race with no finish line. It is looking at your life with honesty and accepting that not everything that drives you is good for you. That not everything you can carry is meant to be carried. That not every battle you can win is a battle worth fighting. Stoicism always understood something our generation has forgotten. Moderation is the guardian of inner peace. Not lack of ambition, not passivity, not indifference, but the ability to stop your own hand before you break what is already enough. Seneca said it plainly: nothing is more harmful to the soul than unmeasured abundance. Because abundance without limits doesn't illuminate, it devours. And if you don't know how to say enough, soon you'll start paying for your successes with your peace. Look at your own life with brutal sincerity. How many times have you kept pushing when you were already exhausted? How many times did you take on one more responsibility, one more commitment, one more burden, just to avoid disappointing others while silently disappointing yourself? How many times did you stay in relationships just to not throw everything away, in jobs out of fear, in routines that no longer nourish you, all because you were afraid to stop? That fear is what keeps you trapped in excess. And excess, eventually, always demands a price. The Stoic practice is simple, but it requires courage. Stop before you break. Most people only learn this after a collapse, after an emotional breakdown, after losing something valuable, after the body or mind sends the bill. But you don't have to get there. You can stop the fall before impact. You can choose pause before the collapse. You can say enough before your life becomes a series of fires you no longer have the strength to put out. Saying enough also means accepting that life moves in cycles, not in straight upward lines. That there are days to advance and days to retreat inward. Seasons of intensity and seasons of silence. That you are not weaker for resting, nor less wise for stepping away from what no longer aligns with who you are. The modern world demands that you always be producing, responding, growing, proving, accumulating. But your soul doesn't work like that. Your soul needs balance, sacred spaces without noise, without pressure, without having to be someone for anyone. And here comes the uncomfortable truth. If you don't say enough, life will say it for you. Through exhaustion, anxiety, emotional shutdown, deep apathy, or even a loss of meaning. Because the soul has a limit. And once that limit is crossed, the mind begins to disconnect as a form of protection. That is why so many people today live on autopilot, not because they don't want to live, but because they never learned to stop. The Stoic does not fear pause. He honors it. He uses it. He understands it as part of discipline, not a break from it. He knows clarity is born in silence, not in constant motion. He knows that when life pauses, it isn't to punish him. It's to reorganize the inner pieces, to adjust the path, to remind him of who he is and where he's going. So, the next time you feel that invisible pressure pushing you forward when you have no energy left, remember this phrase: enough, because I respect myself. Not enough, because I can't anymore. Not enough, because I'm tired. Not enough, because I want to give up. Enough, because I respect myself. Understanding your limit is not weakness. It is mastery. Stopping does not pull you away from your goals. It brings you closer with clarity. When you say enough, life stops being a weight and becomes a path again. This is the habit that transforms all others. The ability to stop what harms you, even if it looks good. The ability to pause before collapse. The ability to honor your energy before the world consumes it. When you learn to say enough, you learn to listen to yourself. And when you learn to listen to yourself, you finally begin to build a life that sustains you, not one that drains you. If you master this habit, life will no longer have to stop you by force. You will stop yourself with wisdom, with calm, with inner strength. And in that silent, firm act, you will discover something few ever understand. You don't need to do everything. You only need to do what is right. And many times, what is right, what is truly powerful, is knowing when to stop. 11th Stoic habit: turn obstacles into strength. There comes a moment in life when you stop asking why things are difficult and start asking why you ever expected them to be easy. That moment marks the beginning of your maturity, because, though it hurts to admit, most of your suffering comes from believing life should flow without resistance, without friction, without tension. You've been conditioned to flee discomfort as if it were a crime, and to view every obstacle as an injustice. But the obstacle was never the problem. Your interpretation of the obstacle was. And until you change that interpretation, even the smallest setback will feel like a personal tragedy. Marcus Aurelius wrote it with devastating clarity: what stands in the way becomes the way. For many, this sounds inspiring until they face a real challenge. Then the truth appears. They don't want the obstacle to propel them. They want the obstacle to vanish. They don't want growth. They want comfort. They don't want transformation. They want the world to change for them. But the Stoic knows life has never worked that way. The obstacle is not a mistake on the path. The obstacle is the path. Think about the last time you avoided something uncomfortable, a difficult conversation, a change you delayed, a truth you ignored, a boundary you were afraid to set. Avoidance didn't protect you. It weakened you. It made you smaller, more sensitive to stress, more dependent on comfort, more afraid of real life. What you avoid doesn't disappear. It grows while you shrink. And eventually, even something normal, a no, a criticism, a risk, a loss, feels unbearable. Why? Because you never trained your inner resistance. The obstacle exists not to punish you, but to train you. Life places you in front of what you most want to avoid, precisely because that is where your strength is hiding. You want to be wiser without mistakes. You want to be stronger without lifting weight. You want to be resilient without adversity. You want to be brave without fear. That's not growth. That's fantasy. Character is built only when you are forced to confront the very things you swore you'd avoid forever. Every strong person you admire has walked through a fire you never saw. Every calm person was forged in storms they never posted about. Every wise person carried questions they didn't know how to answer. There is no greatness without trial, no clarity without prior confusion, no strength without crisis. If you're waiting for life to offer you an easier route, a kind of emotional highway with no curves, no hills, you're waiting for a life that doesn't exist. The most painful part of an obstacle isn't what it demands from you. It's what it destroys inside you. Your fragile identity. That part of you that thought you were special, that believed things should work on the first try, that expected life to reward your good intentions instead of your discipline. But when the obstacle appears, that identity collapses, and the real you emerges. The one you didn't know was there. The one who discovers they can endure more than they imagined. The one who learns adversity doesn't arrive to destroy, but to reveal. The Stoics had a habit. When something difficult happened, they didn't ask, "Why me?" They asked, "For what purpose to me?" Because they knew every challenge carries a message, a call to growth, an instruction in disguise, an opportunity that cannot appear any other way. The obstacle forces you to do something you would never choose voluntarily. Move toward what makes you uncomfortable. And that movement, even if painful, is the seed of your next version. It's easy to be disciplined when everything flows. Easy to stay calm when nothing tests you. Easy to be kind when no one provokes you. Easy to be spiritual when life doesn't pressure you. The real test, the true difficulty, is holding your center while everything around you falls out of shape. That is mastery. That is temperance. That is real strength. Not the emotional gym where you lift motivational quotes, but the strength of someone who walks through a storm and still chooses direction. The obstacle, if you allow it, makes you dangerous. Dangerous in the sense that you no longer collapse for every difficulty. You understand difficulty is part of training. You become someone who no longer asks for an easier life, but for a stronger mind. Someone who doesn't break easily, because they understand every inner fracture is an invitation to rebuild better. Next time something stands in your way, don't ask, "Why now?" Ask, "What part of me needs this?" Maybe your patience, maybe your discipline, maybe your humility, maybe your resilience, maybe your vision. The obstacle doesn't arrive by accident. It arrives exactly where you are weak, because that is where it must work. Turn your burdens into training. Turn your problems into purpose. Turn your pain into direction. That is the habit. That is the path. That is the life that will make you invincible. 12th Stoic habit. Choose joy as a form of wisdom. There comes a point in life when you discover something unsettling. Being happy requires more courage than being miserable. Misery has familiar roots, predictable patterns, ready-made excuses. Happiness, on the other hand, demands presence, discipline, and inner responsibility. It forces you to look directly at your chaos, to organize your mind, adjust your emotions, and consciously choose what expands your soul. That's why so few people are truly happy. They prefer familiar pain over unfamiliar freedom. Most people don't understand that Stoic joy is not a stroke of luck, not a pretty day, not a positive streak. Stoic joy is a decision, a practice, a daily commitment. It is choosing clarity even when shadows appear, choosing serenity even when there is noise, choosing gratitude even when there is lack, choosing perspective even when there is chaos, choosing to be the master of your life even when your mind tries to drag you into its most fearful version. Modern society has turned happiness into a performance. Smiles in photos, cropped inspirational quotes, perfect routines, and you living a real life look at that and think you're failing. But the Stoics knew real happiness does not depend on the world, but on your interior. It isn't artificial light. It's inner fire. It isn't built outward. It's built inward. It cannot be bought, faked, or staged. It is trained. Stoic joy is born from inner order, from aligning your mind with your values, your actions with your principles, your attention with what truly matters. Because the greatest source of suffering is living in contradiction. You say one thing but do another. Want peace but feed chaos. Seek gratitude but cultivate complaint. Desire clarity yet drown yourself in noise. Joy cannot grow in a field filled with internal conflict. It needs coherence, integrity, a unity between your thoughts, your decisions, and your behavior. Seneca said happiness is living in accordance with nature. What he truly meant was this: when you don't betray yourself, you rest. And when you rest, joy emerges. But how can you feel joy if every day you demand what you cannot sustain? How can you feel joy if you never pause to appreciate what you already have? How can you feel joy if you postpone your well-being for some vague future in which you'll magically be someone else? Joy is now or never. It is not a destination. It is a stance. It is not a prize. It is a consequence. It is not luck. It is practice. Choose joy as you would choose a weapon for war, because life will not protect you from pain, but trained joy will protect you from becoming your own executioner. Stoic joy does not deny tragedy. It understands it. It does not ignore pain. It moves through it. It does not pretend everything is fine. It chooses peace even when things are not. Stoic joy is quiet where others scream, acceptance where others demand, calm where others break, still strength where others seek frantic stimulation. Mature gratitude, not childish euphoria. And here's something more. There is nothing more revolutionary today than being genuinely happy. In a world obsessed with comparing, complaining, competing, and begging for validation, the person who finds joy in their own internal order becomes unmanipulable. They don't need approval. They don't need spectacle. They don't need to prove anything. That emotional autonomy does more than attract, it unsettles. In a world full of noise, someone who walks in peace becomes a living reminder that most people are lost. Choosing joy as wisdom means you understand nothing is permanent. Everything changes, everything passes, everything moves. And still you choose to walk lightly, because you know clinging destroys you, exaggeration drains you, and resisting the inevitable exhausts you. Joy emerges when you cooperate with life, not when you fight it. Choose joy in the ordinary, in the water you drink, in the air you breathe, in the silence that holds you, in the small progress you made today, in the conversation that made you think, in the obstacle that shaped you. Joy is not in the big victories. It's in the way you see the small ones. Train your joy as you train your body, with consistency, discipline, and intention. Don't wait to feel good to be grateful. Be grateful, and you'll see how your day changes. Don't wait for calm to organize your mind. Organize your mind, and calm will arrive. When you choose joy, even in the midst of chaos, you become someone who no longer depends on anything external to stay standing. And that, in Stoic terms, is pure freedom. Because in the end, what you call happiness is not an emotional state. It is the direct result of how you choose to live internally when no one is watching. That is the habit. That is the path. That is the joy no one can take from you, because it does not come from outside. It comes from you. There are moments in life when you're forced to learn what you never wanted to accept. That it's not the world that breaks you, but the people you allowed to stay too close. That it's not fate that wounds you, but your own insistence on keeping doors open that you should have closed long ago. That it's not bad luck that wears you down, but your silence toward what has been consuming you in private. And it's precisely there at that point where life becomes a mirror, when the truth appears naked, brutal, impossible to ignore. Most of the suffering you carried didn't come from visible enemies, but from connections you tolerated out of fear of being alone. Today you know it, and although it hurts to admit it, you also know that acknowledging it is the first act of freedom you've had in a long time. Because if you've listened this far, it's because you no longer want to keep living with a mind full of other people's voices. Voices that drained you, manipulated you, made you feel small, made you doubt yourself. Voices disguised as affection, loyalty, innocence. Voices that made you carry guilt that wasn't yours, expectations you never asked for, wounds that never belonged to you. And even so, you carried them for years, as if they were part of your identity. But now you understand, the weight that drowned you the most was never the weight of your problems, but the weight of the wrong company. This is where real transformation begins. Because there comes a moment on the path, silent, without applause, without warnings, when you decide for the first time to stop justifying the unjustifiable. You stop normalizing behaviors that hurt you. You stop holding on to connections that take more than they give. You stop filling your time with people who empty your soul, and you don't do it out of resentment or pride or revenge. You do it because you finally understand that your peace is worth more than any story, more than any broken promise, more than any "I'm sorry" that will never change anything. You do it because you finally recognize that living surrounded by poison, even if it feels familiar, will never be home. And although the decision to distance yourself may seem cold from the outside, you know it isn't. You know that before you stepped away, you spent sleepless nights justifying what could not be justified. You know you tried to save people who didn't want to be saved. You know you carried guilt that wasn't yours. You know you gave chances to people who only kept you close so they wouldn't feel alone, not to see you grow. You know you stayed even when your heart begged you to leave. And even so, you remained, not out of weakness, but out of loyalty. But loyalty misplaced is a silent form of self-destruction. That's why this closing is not a farewell to others, it's a return to yourself. It's the declaration that you are no longer willing to destroy yourself, to maintain connections that don't sustain anything. It's the moment you decide that your life deserves less noise, less drama, fewer masks, and more clarity, more balance, more character. It's the exact point where you finally understand that any relationship that requires you to betray yourself, to preserve it, was lost long ago. And yes, it will hurt. It will hurt because you are breaking emotional habits, not people. It will hurt because you are leaving behind versions of yourself that learned to settle. It will hurt because temporary loneliness feels scarier than the wrong company. But it's also true that after the pain comes something you forgot existed. Lightness. That feeling of breathing deeply without guilt. That silence where the voices that once diminished you no longer live. That clarity that only appears when you stop justifying the poison and start recognizing the truth. The most ironic and the most beautiful part is that life always responds to your inner decisions. When you clean your circle, life cleans your path. When you close doors that poison you, others open that nourish you. When you choose self-respect, people who know how to respect show up. When you stop chasing emotional crumbs, you realize you never needed to beg for anything. And when you decide that your peace is non-negotiable, the world stops playing with you. But here comes the most important point of this, closing the truth that almost no one has the courage to face. It's not enough to remove the wrong people from your life if you still allow them to live in your mind. Distancing them physically is easy. Expelling them from your inner dialogue is what truly frees you. Because as long as you keep repeating old scripts, old fears, old wounds, old names, you won't have reclaimed your power. Removing someone from your life takes 1 minute. Removing them from your mind takes a daily decision. And that decision begins today. So right now, I want you to ask yourself the most honest question of this episode. Which part of your life are you truly willing to protect? Your peace or your attachments? Your future or your nostalgia? Your growth or your emotional comfort? Your dignity or your fear of being alone? Because the answer you give won't be a sentence, it will be your destiny. It will define the quality of your life, the quality of your relationships, the quality of your mind, and ultimately, the quality of your freedom. And when this episode ends, when you turn off the screen or take off your headphones, I don't want you to go back to the same patterns. I don't want you to keep maintaining connections that don't sustain you. I don't want you to return to conversations that drain you. I don't want you to keep trying to fit into places where you no longer belong. I don't want you to keep trying to save people who drown in their own poison and blame you for not sinking with them. I don't want you to keep betraying yourself just to remain in someone else's life. I want you to do what you should have done long ago. Choose yourself. Not selfishly, but consciously. Not from anger, but from clarity. Not to push everyone away, but to finally come closer to yourself. I want you to become someone who no longer asks for permission to protect their peace. Someone who knows how to close cycles without looking back. Someone who understands that loving doesn't mean sacrificing yourself to the point of disappearing. Someone who inspires respect not by what they say, but by what they no longer tolerate. Because here is the final truth, the truth that will define your life from this moment on. You cannot attract what is right while you're still holding on to what destroys you. You cannot build a strong life on contaminated ground. You cannot find healthy people while clinging to those who feed on conflict. You cannot grow if your circle needs you small. You cannot flourish if you keep watering the same shadows. Today, a chapter ends. Today, another begins. And even if no one else notices, you will feel it. You will feel it the first time you say no without explaining. The first time you set a boundary without shaking. The first time you choose silence over argument. The first time you walk away without making noise. The moment your life begins to fill with people who add rather than drain. And when you finally discover that peace is not found, it's cultivated. If you made it this far, then you're ready. Not to run from the poison, but to rise above it. Not to destroy others, but to rebuild yourself. Not to end up alone, but to end up with yourself. And believe me, that is the beginning of an entirely different life. A life where you choose who enters, who stays, and who will never cross your door again. Your voice matters here more than you think. Every insight you share strengthens and elevates this community, because this isn't just another space. It's a circle of people who choose to live with intention, with discipline, and with character. Each of you leaves a mark, and the reflection that receives the most support will be pinned as a banner of who we are. Not as decoration, but as a reminder of the kind of warrior who chooses to think, feel, and act with stoic clarity. Because this is a community that doesn't run from pain, it walks through it with courage. A community that doesn't look for cheap comfort, it seeks wisdom. A community that doesn't break under adversity, it turns it into strength. And if you've made it this far, it's because something inside you is already shifting. Something is waking up. Something is asking for more. So, before you leave, check the description. There you'll find the paths we created to help you keep strengthening your mind. They're not there by accident. Each one exists to help you go deeper, build inner resilience, and return again and again to that place within you where nothing and no one can take your peace. Subscribing isn't doing the podcast a favor. It's an act of respect toward yourself. It's choosing not to live on autopilot anymore. It's committing to think differently, to feel with more order, to live with more intention. Because every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we publish reflections designed to stay with you when life gets heavy, when your mind gets loud, when you need a reminder of who you are. Not following us means risking missing the one lesson you might need in the hardest moment. And if you choose to go a step further, if you choose to become a member, understand one thing clearly. You're not donating, you're sustaining a mission. Because of you, this flame stays alive. Because of you, we can keep spreading Stoicism as a refuge for millions who are fighting not to give up. Your support is what keeps this podcast alive, strong, and growing. You're not a spectator, you're part of the foundation holding this community together. I'll see you in our next Stoicism for Winners session, where we'll keep exploring the depth of Stoic wisdom applied to everyday life. In the meantime, dive into the recommended sessions in the description and continue your path. And until we cross paths again, don't forget this: you are the master of your perception, the guardian of your peace, and the warrior of your own battle. That is the legacy of Stoicism. That is the art of becoming invincible.